Welcome to Gaia's Love, a podcast of brief messages to help humanity bridge the gap to the new earth. My name is Vivienne Gerard. It is my delight to be a scribe for consciousness today, sharing the wisdom that flows through from Source. Here we go. Episode 370. It is Friday. Here in Cincinnati, it's a little chilly. We have blue skies. Some of the clouds are moving through. It's been really gray here lately, and we have some sunshine, which feels amazing. For those in the United States, it is the day after Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving to all who are listening. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being in this space with me. Thank you for choosing to listen to my ramblings and my story of what I experience here in this human journey, and for all the ways that you send your love and appreciation back to me. I wasn't sure about doing a podcast today, and when I was meditating, I just got the really clear message, like, this is what you do. This is what you do for your own practice and your own awareness. And so show up and allow energy to move through you in the way that you know how to do it. So that is what I'm doing today. I'm showing up a little sick still, not feeling 100% yet. A little tired, kind of cranky, and also very aware that there's just a lot of energy moving, and it feels important for me to name some of it to myself into the space, and then to kind of work through some of what's coming up in my own awareness. Okay, so backstory. Last week, not this week, so about a week and a half ago, my husband tested positive for COVID after waiting maybe a week for his results. And so I took a test because I was concerned about my parents, who I see very often and who are definitely high risk for getting ill. And so I took a test and waited another, 4 or 5 days until the results came back, and my test was positive also. And so I have been quarantined since I found out my husband had it, and then also starting to develop symptoms within a few days. So I'm not sure how long I had the virus in me already, but the symptoms have been just like a regular flu, not too terrible, but more just like waves of it. Like I feel a little better, and then I feel a little worse, and then I feel better and I feel worse. And so I've just been moving through it. The surprise, maybe it's not quite a surprise, what I've spent more time processing than the physical is the energy of COVID, the reactions, the emotions that come up in how this virus moves and what it brings up in myself and in everyone around me. So I'm going to ramble a little bit about that. And first let me just say too, it's funny because I am very healthy most of the time. I do not get sick very often. And in the early start of coronavirus back in March, that's when I created I Am Light Medicine. And that whole offering is about how we bring light into our body and use meditation and visualization as a way to heal the body, to move illness out of our experience once we are aware of what that illness is teaching us. Because the body is the physical vessel for whatever we experience as souls in this physical body. And so the body often teaches us. And when we have illness, our ability to learn from it quickly and allow the energy to shift can help us have a much more peaceful human body experience. And so for me, I was absolutely certain that I would not get COVID because I am such an advanced, amazing energy being that how could I possibly manifest this virus that I don't need the symptoms for? Which of course meant I would manifest the virus and have the symptoms that I needed to learn the lessons that I apparently was going to be working on. So I have been applying what I know about energy and healing. I have been so supported with other healers and been able to witness how the gifts they create, the teas and the salves and the lotions and the resources they found to help us move through illness very quickly. Their physical resources are just as powerful and work so well with my energy meditation resources. And so that has been for sure one of the gifts and the blessings for me as I've experienced COVID is to be amazed again at who I have surrounded myself with and how wise so many of these individuals are. Big shout out to my beautiful friend Lisa, who just had already prepared me. I was laughing the other day when I was talking to her about it. She had suggested a few things, and I was going through my cabinets looking to see, because I thought I had something she had given me a while ago, and each cabinet I opened there was another little jar of something amazing from her and another packet of tea, and so I just kept finding all these incredible gifts that she's given me, and each one was exactly what I needed. So I told her if I got COVID just to become aware of how incredibly gifted you are, it was absolutely worth it. So she has been just such a gift for me over the last couple of weeks. So there's the whole body thing, right? Like, how does energy move through the body? And I am very familiar with that and very aware of physical expressions or blocks. I have quite a few of the items in Louise Hay's app and her book memorized. So as soon as the symptoms started, I was in my mind checking off all the things that I must have been feeling to create the physical symptoms. For example, fever. Fever is very much about anger burning up inside. And I was so pissed that I had picked up the virus. So pissed. So pissed that I had to take a test. I mean, furious about the test, because I don't go to doctors unless there's some critical emergency. I'm very healthy, and so to have this woman do her nose swab was so invasive, and I was so upset about it. So upset. And so I had a fever the very next day, and have been fighting that off and on, trying to manage my body temperature, because I have these peaks of feeling mad about something else and then cooling my body back down again. And so it's just been this interesting game I've been playing with myself of managing how that fever is moving. Other symptoms, headache especially in I Am Light medicine, is very much about too much going on and not being able to allow that inflow of energy from source to come through, because you're so distracted and busy multitasking, and so you're overwhelmed, and we tend to cover the top of our head and block that flow of energy that wants to come in from source or the universe or God. And so it creates tension and pressure at the head, which causes a headache. And so I had lots of headaches because I was trying to control the situation and obviously not doing it very well. A stuffy nose is all about your feeling of self-worth, the way that we beat ourselves up. And then runny nose is that inner crying, just really being so upset at what's happening. And so your nose is just running all this energy, mucus out of your body. And then cough Coughing is often, as I clear my throat, it's an activation of the throat chakra and expressing to the world whatever you're feeling. So depending on how you're coughing, it's usually some sort of bark or signal for attention. So yeah, there was a lot going on. There was a lot happening in managing my physical symptoms and being in them at the same time as trying to manage them really wore me down. And so what happens, I find, is when my mind is trying to manage the understanding of it and my body is in the middle of feeling it, there's this crazy loop that begins. And so for me, what that looked like was laying in bed wide awake at night, not being able to sleep, probably because of the Sudafed and Tylenol that I was trying to use to manage my symptoms that my body is not used to. And then also just the energy of wanting to understand, being in the middle of it, but wanting the big picture, having the minute physical experience in my body, but wanting to understand the whole big galactic image of what was happening. It just created so much looping. And so I was tired because I was wide awake. And I guess I'm naming all of these symptoms for anyone who is feeling a match to that or has gone through this experience and maybe thought you were kind of doing it in a weird way or your own way, but maybe there are some similarities that we can find when we share stories like this. So that was what was happening in the middle of all of that. It's not just a flu, right? Like I've had the flu and colds before. It wasn't that. This has the energy that comes from something being magnified exponentially because so many people are putting their attention on it. So perhaps these two examples will help. When I was sitting here meditating, trying to figure out how to put some framework around this as I shared my experience, I was thinking about the word COVID, the energy, the amplification of energy attached just to the word COVID or to the diagnosis COVID. And the two examples that came to mind were, the first was in The Lion King with the word Mufasa. When the hyenas would say Mufasa, they would go Mufasa, and then they would like shiver, and they would have this reaction like shivers down their spine because they knew Mufasa had the strength and the courage and the power to destroy them if they acted out. He was the king of the land, and so when they said his name, they could feel his power and his strength, and so they would shiver after they would say it. I feel like COVID has that same energy in the way that we react to it. Like, oh shit, COVID, like shivers, chills. The other example that came to mind was was in Harry Potter series with Voldemort, and how literally the name wasn't even used after a while. It was he who shall not be named, because every time someone would say his name, it would strengthen his power. And so they stopped saying his name, but then I feel like he who shall not be named also became this powerful vibration because everybody knew who it was attached to and what it represented. I feel that for COVID, we have, as a humanity, we have said the name, the energy of COVID so many times. I tried to Google search and I couldn't find an answer, but I don't know how many times has that word been said in this year of 2020, and with how much emotion attached to it. For those who have been very sick or have lost someone, or someone has transitioned with COVID, it's as bad a word as cancer or diseases, whatever has that same death sentence for those who have seen their businesses destroyed or disrupted, or there's so many, you don't need me to go through all of it. There's such an intense energy associated with the word and the diagnosis of COVID, and it takes a flu symptoms experience and supercharges it with all of the energy that goes along with that word, with that vibration. And so that has been the discovery or the exploration I've been moving through mostly over the last week and a half, is what is the energy of this, and how has it become this powerful, and how does it apply in a micro way? I understand a lot of the macro impacts, across our world, but micro, like bringing it down into me, my life, my relationships, my choices, how does it apply? And so that has been a lot of the mental looping, trying to understand it, trying to put my arms around it in a sense, feeling the energy of it in a very direct way, in how it's impacting me, how it's impacting my activities. So do I have it all figured out? No. Do I have some magic answer that will say to everybody, here's what COVID means? No, not at all. But I have some reflections that I've been sitting with. So my mind is like, I don't know. I don't know. Do we share? What kind of reflections do we share? Because my mind goes into some really adventurous places. I guess this would be my starting point, perhaps. There's this belief I have, this basic belief that when we are in this human journey, the soul, the mind, and the body work together. And you can't have a mind and a body and a soul if you don't have the soul. And the soul is the choice to exist, the choice to have this human experience. And so the soul chooses the moment of birth. We may think it's, the doctor that decides or the mother that decides, but I believe it's the soul that activates. This is the moment of birth because this is the astrological chart that is going to guide your whole human journey. And so the specific minute is decided by the soul. For that to be true, I believe death is exactly the same. That the soul decides at which moment the journey is complete. And there may be many options along the human path where we get to have that choice as a soul. Like, yes, the adventure is going great, I'm going to continue. No, this adventure is done, I don't want this anymore. I'm going to leave Earth and go to a different adventure. And so the soul is the one making that choice when to arrive and when to exit. And so that is a basic belief of mine. It's a basic premise of the work that I do and the way that I understand life and death and the journey in between. It's one of my, I guess you'd call it like a bedrock. It's like one of my base tenets of my philosophy of the human journey. And so as I've watched COVID move around the world and the numbers rise, there's been this internal processing I've been doing that I don't always share because it's one of my basic beliefs. That doesn't mean it's everybody else's belief. And it's a very sensitive subject when there is a pandemic, when there's mass death. It brings up so much in individuals, and so I know my value, my opinion, but that doesn't always mean everyone else agrees or wants to hear it. So I'm sharing it in this space because you can turn off the podcast if you don't want to hear it or you don't agree, and that's totally fine. For me, I truly believe COVID is a virus that can only live, this is the definition of a virus, it can only live in a host body that receives it. And so there must be a match in the individual receiving it that wants to learn something from that virus, or it wouldn't be received into the host body. It's amazing to me, and I know to many others, that people who are side by side with each other all day, one can get it and one doesn't. All the people that I saw, everyone tested negative, the ones who decided to take a test, even though they were around me or touching someone who was around me. The circles that you see in all of the maps and grids about how COVID spreads. Unless there's something to be learned that the host body chooses to learn, the virus isn't going to come into that host body. And that also is one of my basic beliefs about the human journey. We allow into our experience that which is going to teach us, that which is going to expand us or knock us down for a while so that we can be really still and learn what we need to learn. But it only comes into our experience with a willingness at a soul level to have that lesson. And that's a hard message for some people to receive, because it's much easier to think that things are done to us, not to feel that there must be something we're learning from it in order for it to have happened in our journey. And so for me, with watching COVID over this past year, I've had this sense of compassion that those who are dying, there's something in their soul that says it's time for me to complete this adventure, and so I'm exiting Earth and I'm going to where I'm going to go next. And I don't know where those are. Nobody knows except that individual soul that chooses to transition from this reality to another reality. So death isn't something that scares me. I don't have a fear of it that I believe many others do, because I just see it as a threshold, a transition into something different or new. Or maybe right back into another human experience with a different body and a different mind and a different life path. Who are we to say that we know every choice that every soul in a human body is making? So this is my hypothesis, my belief, is that lots of people have decided to exit this experience they're having right now of Earth and go to something new. So that adds an intensity also to the vibration of COVID. There's such a focus on choice, the choice to stay, the choice to go, the choice to even allow the virus into the body. It's so much about owning your choice, I believe. So that's one thing. My mind is like all over. What surprised me in my experience of COVID is the immediacy of the reaction of fear. How quickly it came up in me first. I had always said from the beginning, I'm not going to do a test. I don't need a test. The moment I found out that I was right here with my husband, and it had been so long between his test and his results, and I had seen my parents in that time, and could I have passed this on to them, and would I be responsible if my parents got ill and suffered, and I don't want to create suffering for them. And I said, I'm not going to do the test, and within 12 hours the next day we're getting the test first thing in the morning. The immediate reaction of fear and responsibility and guilt and probably responsibility was the biggest one. Like, would I be responsible for their suffering? And I didn't want that. And so I felt like if I get the test and it's negative, then then there's no problem, but then when you take the test, your mind starts going through, but what if I'm positive? And then what's going to happen? And so the test creates another whole level of fear. Whether you take it or not, it's like suddenly there's this other whole level of emotion that's coming through. So I have been quite surprised at how much fear still is in my space. And I've spent a lot of time talking, meditating again, visualizing. It's interesting because we got our test results last Friday, and literally maybe a half an hour before I was supposed to start recording the podcast, and it threw everything up in the air, and I had a deadline of how long I had available to do the podcast because I had the gym call at noon. And so it was just this all this energy moving really, really fast and trying to find my steadiness in it. And what I needed the most was to breathe and to meditate. And so that was what I was able to offer in the podcast last week. I hadn't even comprehended what was happening inside of me to be able to articulate it. And so the breathing meditation was my way of moving fear and settling into the moment and settling into choices and next choices, and allowing myself a pause to be with what I was feeling. And I've continued focusing on my breath and on my meditation. The first fear was definitely within me, worrying about those that perhaps I had impacted. And then almost immediately was the fear projected back at me from those I had been around, and what the ripples would look like, how it impacted so many people, because I could choose to quarantine, which I did immediately and have, but then all these other individuals, how do they make that choice? And I'm very fortunate, most of my work is virtual, so I'm able to continue working, but for many they can't, and it impacts others. And it just kept rippling. And so I found for myself so there's so many reasons why I believe I've experienced COVID, which I've been naming, but one of the biggest was to find my own steadiness in a deeper way in the midst of a really powerful vibrational collective energy. I was watching a Santero Gemini video that she recorded on November 11th, and I didn't see it until many days later. But she said, you're in this flow with your life and your work and you're juggling everything. And she said, then this phenomenon comes in and completely turns your attention to a new place from where you have been before. And the way she described it, she named exactly what had happened. When I was in my routine in my life and doing things as I was used to doing them, and then whoosh, in comes this energy, this phenomenon, this global virus, global focused thought that we call COVID. And it paused everything else and put me completely into the experience of the phenomenon. And I thought that was so helpful to hear in the video from her after I'd already started to experience it, because it does feel like you're swept up by this current, by this wave, and it's going to take you in this direction, and you kind of lose all sense of control or focus, because everything is co-creating so rapidly with all the people who are also having their reactions, and it's like you're picked up and swept away. And so being able to stick to my meditation practice, my routine as much as possible, not projecting or reacting when someone would bring their fear, but just holding steady and breathing through it with them, for myself, and then making solid choices that I felt were in integrity for myself. and then honoring others doing the same thing. And my choices and their choices didn't have to be the same. And what I was learning and what they were learning from COVID did not need to be the same. I had this moment when I was in those looping nights in between taking the test and getting the results. I had this moment where I was really quiet and clear with myself, and I thought, okay, if I get a negative or a positive result, which is going to be the highest activation for me and for the community around me? And immediately I knew, like, the positive test result is the activation that is going to bring the I can't even get the words out, biggest growth, the most confusion, and the biggest growth for myself and for everyone around me. And so that is what happened, and it wasn't a surprise then when I got the positive result back, because it was like my mind had already said, here's the journey you're going into now. We're going to shift direction a little bit, and this is what it's going to look like. So, yeah, this was a lot to share. I have also been surprised by the secrecy, the shame, the guilt. Someone was saying in one of my calls, it's like STDs, in the olden days when you'd get an STD and you'd have to call your partners and whisper that you had the disease, and it was just all this like hidden stuff happening. And I was completely surprised that was true, that's how it felt. And part of sharing in this podcast space is to say, that's crazy. It's a virus like any other virus. It just has this intense, focused attention on it that makes it so much bigger. And so can we shine a light in that space and start to dispel some of the judgment that we have for ourselves, for what my husband and I both were saying is, but we follow all the rules. We follow all the rules and we still got it, right? Can we let go of the self-judgment and the judgment for others that there's something bad or wrong about having a COVID experience? I've found COVID to be a powerful teacher for me and a massively rapid cleanser. The thought, the fear, the emotion comes up and like it's just moved and cleared. And I wouldn't say cleared, brought up for awareness so that it can hopefully become cleared. It is a huge activator, and it takes a really steady groundedness to metabolize how it whirls into your life and throws everything up and around, and then hopefully whirls slower, more peacefully out the other side. Yeah, so everyone around me is healthy. I've been spending a lot of time with my husband, which I love, and also no time with my children, which is very sad and disappointing, and then also no time with my parents, who I miss. So there's been definitely some emotional, like, feeling it and feeling the feels as we describe in the work I do. But mostly I'm grateful. I am grateful for a strong, healthy body that really has not had too terrible symptoms. I'm so grateful for all the love and support around me, and the gifts and resources of my wise healer friends. Yeah, and I'm grateful for what COVID is teaching me and showing me, and for this space to be able to share that and hopefully continue bringing more light into this virus and more awareness into what we as a humanity are moving through. This year has been one for the books, for sure, and I'm already going to name this. I feel like the full moon and lunar eclipse on Monday in Gemini is going to be profound. My rising sign is Gemini, and I can already feel some of the emotions. Full moons. You guys know, if you listen to me, full moons are a lot for me. I was born on a new moon, and new moons are way more exciting and fun than full moons. We also have I don't know if I'm going to get it right, the Jupiter, Pluto, no, that's not quite right. There's something big happening December 21st, and I keep seeing all these posts about it. At 0 degrees Aquarius, like, it's a massive shift for humanity, and I would imagine that there's a lot that we're going to be clearing and releasing to prepare for that shift in consciousness. And then we go right into the transition from 2020 into 2021. So, and then January, I turn 50. So there's a lot of potential and amazingness that is happening. So be kind to yourselves, be patient with your bodies. If you have any matches to any of the symptoms that I've been describing, like, be kind to yourself and take naps when you need them, as I have been attempting to do. And then allow those who love you to love on you. It feels good to be able to support someone when they need you, and I'm really good at doing that for others. It's been a beautiful lesson for me to learn to receive more. So if you have a match, receive more. Receive more. Allow people to love on you. I am taking the weekend off, so I will not be doing a Sunday call, and I will be back in December, which is next week, with our next episode. So have a beautiful weekend, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to this vibration of pure love. I invite you to join me on Sunday mornings for an hour of meditation, visualization, and energy healing, where we realign our mind, body, spirit with Gaia and Source. You can learn more at mysouljourney.com. Let's take this message of Gaia's love out into all of our relationships and communities today. So much love from my heart to yours.